Ready? Okay. I am Melissa Irvin, the chair of the City of Madras Planning Commission, and I call this meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. Nick, would you assist us in our roll call today?
Sure. Commissioner Kendall,
Present.
Commissioner Irvine,
Present.
Commissioner Etter,
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds is absent. You have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda that I need to know about? Okay, wonderful. Okay, then we'll move on to our first topic, which is a public hearing. We are opening the public hearing. This is a request for development code text amendments to amend the effective FEMA flood insurance rate map for the City of Madras. Does any commissioner have any actual economic conflict of interest to disclose? Commissioner Kendall?
I do not.
Commissioner Etter?
I do not.
Commissioner Urban? I do not. All right. Is the staff ready to?
Yes, so we've got a PowerPoint presentation to kind of take us through this evening. We're going to get the right presentation up. That's the one. Now we're cooking with gas. We have a proposal before the Planning Commission to amend the development code. It's a fairly simple and very limited amendment. But the implication is pretty significant. In effect, it changes or would change the effective flood insurance rate map. So what I thought I would do, recognizing Planning Commission, as long as I've been here, has never had a new map, new flood insurance rate map, and has not really changed your flood plain development regulations. And there hasn't been a whole lot of talk about, okay, how does all this work? So I thought I would take some extra time and kind of explain how this framework works between FEMA and the city, and how this code amendment works, and the history of what we've been doing as a staff level for almost a decade. So with that, we'll go ahead and get going. What we want to do is talk about terminology, make sure we're all using the right terms and using them correctly so that we're can have a conversation and mean the same thing when we use those terms. Talk about why we have a flood insurance rate map or firm. As I said, chronology of our efforts and overview some of our public notice and public engagement that we've already done thus far. And of course, we'll review the code amendment and give you guys and the audience as well a little precursor to the rest of the steps in the hearing this evening. So next slide. All right, some terminology here. National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. Historically speaking, and as you read the news today, the National Flood Act was, I think, passed in 1969 or 1970. There were flooding occurring across the nation, and property owners were losing property. There was loss of life, and in some cases, properties couldn't be insured, and therefore you couldn't lend or buy property. Therefore, the United States Congress and the president at the time signed that act, establishing a program that would provide subsidized flood insurance for property owners if certain standards were met, right? And a little side note here, as we really get challenged and see the devastation in California and across the West Coast, my prediction is in 10 years, you're going to have a national wildfire insurance program. And if you pay attention to the news here in the state of Oregon, just 2 weeks ago, the state of Oregon released the Oregon Wildfire Risk Map. By the way, with that comes building standards. So if you're in a moderate or high risk zone, you have higher building standards to harden your home to prevent what? Loss of property, loss of life. Sound familiar? So this is the natural hazard kind of risk management strategy that we have, or framework that we have as a country. So it's this program, the NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program, is administered by the Federal Emergency Management Administration. Works with communities to do that, to set up a map, to set up regulations, and in so doing, we prevent or reduce the risk of losing property or life. And oh, by the way, when a flood happens, a catastrophic flood, those communities are then eligible for mitigation or recovery funds. Also, something in the news right now. So, Special Flood Hazard Area, SFHA. This is the technical term, what a lot of people just call the floodplain, because back in the 70s, that's what it was. This program has evolved. The terminology has evolved. This is the area that is the 100-year floodplain, or a 1% chance every year that it's going to flood or be inundated by flood waters. The floodway, that is the channel or river or other water course adjacent to the areas that must be reserved for the discharge of base flood water. So, and I've got a depiction of this here in a second to help kind of describe this. But, you know, I really think as your floodway is really kind of your stream channel. And as you look at our maps, it's a little bit more than that, but that's where you're going to have much more frequent flooding. Next slide, please. I would note, I did try to embed the QR code here. This takes you to the city's website where we've got various pieces of information, including an online mapper that residents or anyone else can put in an address and then search for that property and figure out whether it's in the special flood hazard or floodway. So that's available as well. This is the depiction of those terms. So you can see the FEMA floodway. This actually came from FEMA. So we always like to tease FEMA that they put out publications and don't use the right terminology. So the FEMA floodway, that's consistent, but the 100-year floodplain, that should be the special flood hazard area. So you can see there in that stream channel, that's where the water's flowing, call it on a day-to-day basis or regular basis. And then that floodway is just a little bit beyond that, right? When you have a little bit larger water events. And then that floodplain, that's really the upper banks of that feature, water feature there. So that's what we're talking about. Next slide, please. So again, why do we have flood insurance rate map? Well, because it's a federal program, and most cases on a practical basis, if someone's gonna buy a property in the floodplain, that lender, whoever's gonna issue the funding for acquiring that property, they're gonna require it because they wanna make sure that whatever money they're lending for the borrower, they're actually gonna have assurance that that property is gonna retain its value, right? Instead of being a catastrophic loss and then they have a loan out that there's no value at the end of the day. So in so doing, it provides federally subsidized insurance. And so while flood insurance is expensive, oh, trust me, the market's much more than the subsidized rate that you get through communities participating in the program. As I said, it's intended to minimize the loss of property and life. Next slide, please. So in terms of development, we always have a map, but really there's more to it than just the map, right? And so when you look at the map, you can say, oh, well, I'm in the floodplain, so I'm fine. Oh, there's a little bit more to it than that, because actually, if your property, depending on the elevation of that property with respect to the elevation of the floodplain, if it's higher, your insurance can be lower. So on the maps, there's ability to determine the flood elevation of any property within the floodplain. So the map, or the flood insurance rate map, we always use what's called the effective map. So right now, as you look on the wall, you can see the 1989 study or 1989 map. That's called the black map. That's, you know, two colors, grayscale. because that's the technology we had in 1989. And then the color map is 2025. And so the current effective map, meaning today when we administer the city's development code and someone wants to propose development, we looked at that map until FEMA adopts a new map, right? And that is the process that we're trying to go through now to establish a new map. That is the purpose largely of this effort. So then that helps us, the effective map helps us determine the elevation of the floodplain and properties in there. So if people are going to build on vacant land in the floodplain, we use the map to determine what elevation that structure needs to be built to. And then accordingly, so the map also says if you're in the special flood hazard area, guess what? Then there's other regulations in the development code that apply. So that map really is the basis for determining the elevation of floodwaters and then the applicable development codes. Next slide. So this is the kind of digitized version of the 1989 flood insurance rate map. Through time, FEMA and others have digitized this. So we've created some colors on this map that's a little easier to read than those grayscale maps. And I think I want to pause here to just kind of get back to a historical component that I've heard in this community for so many years, which really in part was the impetus for this study, which is I've heard complaints that my property, it shouldn't be in the floodplain, it never floods, and the flood map's wrong, right? Heard that many, many times. Also, when you think back to that slide where we had the depiction, the cross section of that stream or water feature, and you had the stream channel, and then the floodway, the floodplain. So that's just one, call it stream. So the challenge we have in the 1989 study is if you look at this map, there's what's called the split channel. And that split channel goes over the high school property, the public schools, and then the northern or northeast channel. That's really what a lot of us think today as Willow Creek, right? When you look at the wide split channel, you don't see in the community lower elevations that support that stream channel for that split channel. It's fairly even in elevation, right? And so that split channel is something that just really is thought has never been there. So when you apply the floodway designation to a property, it's not that you can't develop on it, but it's extremely challenging. For example, one of the requirements is that a no-rise analysis be completed to federal standards in terms of methodology. And that no-rise analysis needs to affirm that the resulting development will not increase the floodwaters above and below the development by 1/10 of an inch or more. Extremely hard to meet that standard. I'll note that the new Performing Arts Center and new stadium at the high school, they did that. They met the standard. And the reason is because they have acres of land. They could move and grade dirt to accommodate that. Most of our lots, residential lots, that are affected by the floodplain and floodway, many of those are 50 by 100 lots or 5,000 square foot lots. You can't do a lot of grading in that small area to meet that standard. So, two challenges we've heard about the 1989 map or our current effective map, and really why we're having this conversation. Next slide, please. So, chronology events here. 2016, after hearing the community concerns, I approached the Army Corps of Engineers and the Portland office about grant funding. They granted us, I think it was a $300,000 grant. The city didn't have to put any cash up. They just paid for it, used their own staff, and they remapped the floodplain. Then in 2018, as they did that remapping work, they found that the J Street Bridge was undersized. And you'll see pictures of that. And it really surprised staff. And so there was a choice the city had to make at that time, which was either you leave the bridge as is, and all of a sudden about 95% of the Pines is now inundated by the floodplain, and the city would need to pay for their flood insurance on an annual basis. We chose with the county to expand the bridge. So in 2019, we got the funding for that bridge expansion. 2020, they started the construction of it. And then in 2023, it was complete. Then in 2024, what seems like only a few months ago, literally and figuratively, in the spring of 24, we submitted to FEMA what's called a letter of map revision. And so that is the formal application you filed to amend the map, the effective map. So FEMA has said, we are okay with the new study, but we need the city to tell us that they are okay with the new map. And then we will finalize it and issue a new effective map and study. That is the purpose of the hearings that we're having before the Planning Commission and City Council in February. So we're trying to tee that up, go through our local hearings process to do that. So that's where we want to be in 2025. My hope would be in the summer of 2025 that we would have a new effective flood insurance rate. Quick history on that. So go ahead, next slide. So how did we remap the floodplain? I think this is very important because technology changes, accuracy is improved. Remember, so back in 1989, how did we map the study? We used a topographic map. We had the guy, the surveyor, they go out there with his sticks and look through that and survey things. We also looked at photographs of floods in the past on buildings, and we've gone out and they looked at the high water mark, because you'll see grass or dirt where that water stopped at the highest elevation, and they go out and measure that and with a surveyor, and they can kind of figure out what the flood water elevation was. Nowadays, it's a little different. So we have light detection and ranging, also known as LiDAR. It's almost readily available across almost the entire United States. Flown by an airplane, got a little device on it about this big, and they can survey the city in probably less than half a day, a couple hours. It's accurate to plus or minus 1/10 of an inch. So you have a very good understanding of the existing condition. And that really is the point of this remapping work. So they did come out, and you'll see some pictures of myself helping them. They did need to remap or resurvey a couple areas. So they supplemented the LiDAR data. So we're using the more modern technology with the new proposed map, hoping to be more accurate with that. So this is the J Street Bridge. And I can tell you that I can walk underneath that, but now it's pretty tight. And then one of the things I've really come to appreciate is how narrow that opening is underneath the bridge, okay? So this was the bridge, and it's still there today. You'll see the expansion, but this was the bridge that was a problem, causing water to back up and then potentially inundate the Pines in a 100-year flood event. Next slide. There was a little culvert in case there was some extra water that came through, but as you know, that's a 3-foot culvert. That doesn't do much for water. Okay, so quickly found that we need to make some changes there. Next slide, please. Just summarize that as well. Go ahead. So on the left is the existing bridge from a slightly different angle, and then to the west of it, you can see the bridge expansion. You can see how wide that is underneath that bridge. That's the bridge span there. It's a 60-foot span there, so has a lot more capacity to allow waters to pass through that. Next slide, please. Again, so started back in 2016, even before that, hearing concerns from the community that our flood map is just not correct. We've now remapped that. We've now expanded the bridge so that no more property than necessary needs to be included in the floodplain. And now we're proposing to establish a new flood map. Next slide, please. So what have we done to date for public notice and engagement? This is really important. These are legal requirements, except for the open house. So on December 12th, we did have an open house. Didn't have great attendance. It was probably day 5 or 6 of the snow, and it got a little crunchy and icy and certainly cold. So we had, I think, 7 or 8 people show up. So attendance wasn't great. We sent notice to all affected property owners. So everyone, regardless of whether in the floodplain or floodway and whether that status would change, we all sent the same note. And we did identify on that letter what the status of their property was on the current map and then the proposed map. And also include a QR code, the city website that allowed them to go and look at the online mapper and have other resources. Then on the 27th of December, we issued a second notice for the January 15th Planning Commission, this hearing tonight, and then the February 28th City Council public hearing. We issued notice of those hearings. And then under Oregon law, it could be argued that we needed to issue what's called a Measure 56 notice, which is anytime a city or local government adopts a new development regulation that may limit development or reduce the value of land, we need to issue notice to them and have specific language in that notice. That language was in the notice as well. So in fact, we issued notice of the public hearings and the Measure 56 notice in one notice as well. The same people that were given notice of the December 12th hearing were given notice of the Planning Commission and City Council hearings in January and February as identified there. It's our hope that the Planning Commission on the 28th will pass a resolution. That resolution is different than an ordinance, right? Ordinance is law. Resolution is how you want to proceed generally without making it law and subject to change. We want to pass the council to pass a resolution saying, FEMA, we've gone through this process. We've conducted local hearings. We are okay with the proposed new firm. We would like you to finalize that map and make it effective. After they do that, they issue the new maps. We will then have the city council in the spring or summer of 25, then pass an ordinance that would enact the proposed code changes before you. The problem here is we didn't want the ordinance passed before FEMA had made the new map effective. So it's a little bit different than normal, but we're trying to forge ahead without making it any further delay. Next slide, please. This is the proposed code amendment. It's fairly surgical and very kind of limited, if you will. In effect, what it's saying is you can see that we're removing the reference to the July 17th, 1989 map. And now we're just identifying that the effective flood insurance study and flood insurance rate map panels for the City of Madras are the maps by which the standards in the flood hazard area regulations apply. So it's kind of a generic statement, and instead of giving that specific date and having to change the date every time a new map comes out, it's just whatever FEMA's effective map is. Okay, that's really the first part. And then B, it supports future amendments by saying a letter of map amendment or letter of map revision to the firm adopted by FEMA or the Federal Insurance and Mitigation Administration shall automatically incorporate in the development code. So we're communicating that at any time in the future, if FEMA changes the map, that the code will change as well. So trying to be flexible there. And that's what we have. Next slide, please. As you can see on the wall, this is a electronic version shown on the screen. I would encourage you or anyone else to look at the maps on the wall if you want to get up close and specific, look at specific properties. But I would also say we also have an online mapper. So if you have properties in specific concern, use that online mapper. You can really zero in on that and see what the existing proposed maps look like for that property. You can see there in the, I called it candy cane stripe because, you know, at the time it was the holiday season, Christmas holiday season, and that seemed to resonate. But the floodway is a bit wider, right? And it does align with a lot of known flooding during high water events, not necessarily floods, right? I mean, we would call, if we had floodwaters that went up to the boundaries of the floodway, most of us would call that a flood. It's just not a 100-year flood event, okay? And it more accurately represents which properties are more likely to be inundated by floodwater. And then that's probably the biggest benefit here is we, as a city, do not want to have a map that creates the impression that someone's property won't flood, but then actually floods. And if they don't have the right insurance, then they have other problems. They may not be able to seek assistance repairing their property and otherwise. So it more accurately aligns with where floodwaters are more likely to inundate property in the city. I would also say that we've got a better cross section. So as you can see the street grid there, but then you're also seeing some lines that kind of go across the floodplain. And most of them are alphabetically indexed. And so those are what we call cross sections, and those have a 5-digit number. It's a 4-digit elevation above sea level down to 1/10 of a foot. And so it's that elevation that the floodwaters are likely to exist. So that's how we review development and whether someone's going to build a home and whether their foundation is above that point or not, based on city code. And you can see that, of course, the split channel has gone away on that. We have done some preliminary mapping as a city. I'm not prepared to show that this evening, but we did do a LiDAR assessment and also surveys of our existing streets elevations, the sidewalks and things like that. And we compared the existing condition today, pavement, asphalt, to the flood elevation and how much fill or how much a building would need to be elevated for new development to meet the 1 foot above the base flood elevation. And you know, the analysis was done for the entire floodplain. High degree of accuracy. There always could be some changes there, but it's just a simple assessment. I want to say quick and dirty. There is some good science behind it, but there weren't too many areas that needed significant elevation changes for new development. Why is this important? Because when you drive through the downtown today and you see some of our vacant properties, the Opportunity Foundation property and otherwise, just note that when you see that the sidewalk, you think to yourself, okay, well, if a new building was going to occupy the Opportunity Foundation property, how high would it need to be to meet the requirements of the flood regulations? And it's probably not too much higher, maybe a foot above. And so the other thing I'll tell you is, if you look closely at the Taco Bell development, that restaurant, look on the west elevation, you'll see a ramp that goes up. And then you have the slab. There's a reason for that. It's because that building was built 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So that's why you have a long ramp going in. So you can kind of project that same elevation to the north on Opportunity Foundation and otherwise. So there's a way, unless you're really looking for it, most people don't understand why they have that ramp there other than probably just an ADA requirement. And yeah, they would have that anyways, but that's why you have that longer ramp. So there is, from a staff perspective, we're not seeing a big difference between what is likely going to be the new flood elevation for the community and how development will need to meet the related standards on that. So, all right, thank you. So we've started the public hearing this evening. Pardon me, you have, And I'm giving my staff report. You're going to take some testimony this evening, those who are proponents of the proposal, those who are neutral, and those who may be opposed. And then you will, again, make formal action to choose to either deliberate or continue the hearing to a date time certain. If you deliberate, then you'll move on to step 6 and actually deliberate. With that, that's about a 30-minute presentation. It was about 20 minutes longer. So I'll pause there for some quick questions.
Yes,
before you
does
proceed.
anyone have any questions right now?
Well, as far as like the rate change goes, what are we looking at as far as, I see this increase, but what does that actually mean on there?
What that means is that's you'll see, I think it's net difference or a column where they're showing the difference between the new and the proposed.
Yeah,
That's the difference in feet down to 1/10 of a foot
okay,
between the effective map that we have today, the 1989 study, and
gotcha,
then the proposed.
okay,
And so what you're seeing here, thank you, is, and just scroll down just a little bit more, just a touch. It's okay. It doesn't have the sheet index. But what you can see there is the increase, the far right column. So you're seeing a 1/2 foot, 0.9 feet. In one case, it's 1 foot. So it's really, the change in the flood elevation is less than 1 foot for most of it.
okay. Thanks.
Yes.
Can you pull up the map on the computer? It was easier to see. Yeah. Okay, so zoom in where Grizzly is. Because it runs all along Grizzly area. And okay, there's J. And Grizzly is further up. And where's the circle up by heading up towards?
Oh, Yarrow? The
Yarrow.
roundabout? Yeah, right there.
Okay, so how much more how much did it grow, or how far are we expanding from previous? Is there a way to know?
Yeah, so you can, you had it right, click that back on. So kind of that purple.
The darker purple
Yeah,
is
that's the
expansion?
prior. So this is the value of having that online mapper. You can go on yourself this evening, should you want to, or anytime thereafter. And you can turn on the existing and the new map, and you can see the difference in the boundaries, and then also the difference in which properties in the special flood hazard area or floodplain.
Okay, the darker pink is the new expansion?
Yeah, can you show her how to turn on the layers there? So, exactly. So, I think it's on the right. Yeah, you go to the right. Yeah. So if you click on the little, I'll call it dashes there, you can open the legend for each layer. Okay. So if you click on the proposed.
Okay, wait a
you-
minute, slow down. This is the proposed new.
Yes,
Can you overlay the old so we can see?
that's what you're seeing right now.
Okay, so the lighter pink is the old and the darker pink is where we want to increase it to, correct?
Generally speaking, yes. What I'm going to say is pay attention to the map legend on the right. So the proposed, where you can see Bethany's got the mouse, you can see the candy cane stripes, that's the floodway. And then that light blue is the new proposed 100-year floodplain. Then when you go down the next layer, this is the current map, and you've got, oh gosh, a lavender and a purple. I'm not good with colors, as many as you know. So you can click these layers on and off and view them individually, but you can also view them at the same time. Okay. Now, you can also, at the address bar at the top, the search bar, if you want to just put that in there right there, you can put in an address, okay, for a property, and it'll zoom right to that property And then on the left, because there's no property selected right now, it'll tell you the existing and proposed status of that property as well.
Now J Street is down here. This way. Okay, and that goes further down to the creek.
That's upstream to upstream Willow Creek, yep.
Okay, then go back up. So the darker purple is the new
The old-
area.
The old. I say old or current, right?
This is the old or current? This is current.
The map right now is showing the old, or I should say the current map.
Okay, and now show me the new one. It's pretty much the same except for the dark pink.
There's, again, it's very similar. There are properties have been removed, but there's also properties have been added.
Right, I was gonna say, because,
And
The-
so the split channel is also not there for the floodway. That's probably the biggest change.
where's that? Pull
So
that
turn
up
off,
down.
turn off the proposed. And turn, okay, so you can see the split channel where it splits out right there, that kind of pinkish color, not the purple.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the split channel right there.
okay.
So you turn on the new one and there's no split channel.
Where did it go?
Well, the mapping revealed that split channel doesn't actually exist.
Oh, gotcha.
So instead of having two floodplain areas.
The floodway areas, yes.
now
Okay.
it's just-
Yes.
Okay, so how many houses were affected with this new expansion?
Um, I don't have that information readily available. I have it all in a spreadsheet.
No, okay, but I mean,
could-
so if we approve it, there's gonna be properties affected because it's increased, correct?
In some cases, properties that weren't in the
That weren't in the
floodplain.
floodplain are now going
Yeah,
to be in
there's
the
a
flood.
couple things that have eventually happened. One, there are properties that weren't in the floodplain or floodway that are now being added to the floodplain or floodway. There's also a scenario where there may be properties that were in the floodplain or floodway,
Right, that are not.
but are
going
now
to-
removed.
Right. So it's almost like it shifted a little bit. These guys
It
go
did
away
shift.
and these guys get added.
It shifted because of better, more precise mapping.
Okay, got you. Oh, okay. And those people have been notified that now you probably will have to get flood insurance,
That was part of the notice as well.
right?
Mhm.
Okay,
But many of them, there's only a few properties that are being added that need to get floodplain insurance. I think it was, I don't want to say a number, but we know of those properties. And so they'll have to get, flood insurance. And so one of the things that FEMA does when they finalize the map is there's a way to notify the lenders.
right, which is expensive insurance.
So this is the nitty gritty and the practical implications to the code amendment. By changing your code to reference the new map, in effect, you're saying two things. One, these properties within the special flood hazard area are gonna have to follow our development regulations. And then two, in some cases, if a property wasn't in the floodplain or floodway before, they're gonna have to get insurance.
Right.
This is also the benefit of it, is it's more accurately identifying the properties that are likely to be inundated in a 100-year flood event. Right? In other words, having a fault, right now, they may have a false pretense or false understanding that I'm not in the floodplain, the map doesn't show them in the floodplain, I'm not gonna flood. But what happens if their house or property is actually flooded? Now,
Yeah.
they're gonna have a requirement to get insurance, and now they'll have an ability to maintain or mitigating
Flooding.
losses.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I just,
unfortunately.
thank you for letting me take the time, but I want to be very clear on this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Wow. Okay, and the open hearing is for if anybody says, I don't want to see it changed, or I'm happy with the change? Is that what the open hearing that we are having is for?
You can accept any public comments that anyone would like to make.
Okay. Thank you, Bethany, very much.
Any further questions? Okay, so we will now open up to public testimony. We usually start off with proponents, neutral, and then we move to, we'll just call it opponents. There's a fancier word. So if you come forward, please make sure that you state your name in the microphone and your current address. It looks like we have 2 people here. Do we have people online as well? So I won't necessarily impose a time limit, but just make sure that the comments relate to what this hearing is about and not anything that's out of our hearings capabilities. So given that, I will open the public hearing. Do we have anyone who is a proponent of this change, which means positive? Do we have anyone that is neutral? Do we have anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
Maybe anyone that doesn't know
Or even
what all
what,
there's.
if you just want to make a comment, come on up. Come up to the microphone, and normally if you have questions, you can refer the questions to us. And then if we don't have the answers, we can follow up with Nick. And just state your name and your address into the microphone, please.
Sam Williams, 680 Southeast Kincaid Road. So we're close to the flood area, floodplain, floodway. Pardon me?
The chair was asking staff to bring up the property.
Oh, yeah, and my question is, do we have access to that map there? I don't see it on the wall, that map that's up right now.
Yes, we will make that available for you.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. And the only difference I see, honestly, in this new map and the old one is like you were mentioning, I don't know, we used to call it the flood path, where there were two flood paths, and this only shows one from what they've learned about the elevation. Otherwise, it's pretty close to the way it was before. Am I wrong in that?
No, that is correct. It's
Great.
fairly similar. However, they got rid of the kind of double channel, which you're alluding to, the 2
Right.
paths.
So it just went to one channel, which, and that one channel is wider, which I'm assuming is, like he said, there's a candy striped area is the existing channel.
That is the channel of Willow Creek in the
Okay,
new survey, yes.
okay.
Are you
Um,
pulling up his property? Oh, okay.
That's okay. It's right on the corner there, Grizzly and Kincaid, right there where your arrow is, right there. It's, anyways,
So is his property going to be on
Uh, on the corner of Grizzly and Kincaid, there, that's our property.
Yeah, so he's clearly outside of it. If you're on the east side of Grizzly Road,
Right.
you're not affected by anything.
We came just because we had questions.
And that's
The
entirely
paper
appropriate.
article
We
wasn't real
appreciate that.
clear about what this was about, but
Yep.
it is mainly about flood insurance for the people in that area. Is that correct?
Exactly. And what the city is trying to do is actually prepare the homeowners for this new accurate map of the floodplain as opposed to the 1989 map that is now outdated.
I guess one more question, if I may. Will this affect development in the area next to the pines, between the pines and the floodway?
And from what Nick was saying is that if there is new development in these areas, they would have to meet the code related to these new flood, not restrictions, but flood requirements. So if a new property was built or a residential development was put in, it would have to meet the newer flood standards once this new flood map is put into place.
And in the area that I'm talking about, between the pines and the creek, it really hasn't changed. It's still in the flood, the 100-year floodplain.
That's correct, Sam. That's right. Most of that land, that grass, the open area, is still, as you can see in the light blue, in the floodplain. A larger portion of the property is affected by the floodway.
I think-
Um,
Right,
and
the
we had
floodway
this-
covers about almost half of that
Yeah,
area.
and we've been, staff has been working with the property owner actually on a development there. We've disclosed it to them. And so they know that this is happening.
So there is development interest in that area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
What it means is when they
That
build the
wasn't
homes,
the answer I wanted, but that's,
Nick,
yeah,
where they're building that development off of Grizzly, is it on the upper side?
yes,
But isn't there also some digging around going on the lower side of Grizzly?
I don't believe so.
yes, there is.
Yeah,
Yes, there is.
because when you,
Green.
before you get to the circle, there is lots of digging going on both sides of the road. The development is on the upper side, which would be higher.
Right there in the little
Right, but
triangle.
before you get to J, there's a whole bunch of
Yeah, so,
things going on down there.
yeah, that's the Grizzly Estates subdivision.
So is that
No, I was
is real
curious.
close to the floodplain, but
Yes,
not, it's still
yes,
high enough.
like 20, 30 feet.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it's very high.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
My question would be concerning on the east side of the creek, where there's the floodway and then the floodplain between the pines and the creek. You said there is development interest in that area. Okay. That's all the question I have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and asking questions. A lot of times notices go out and it's not clear what they mean. And part of it is it has to meet a legal standard. So coming to these meetings is wonderful. I wish more people came. Of course, come forward. Yep, and just say your name and your address.
Bree Williams. My address,
Yep, if you would.
680 Southeast Kincaid Road, Madras. Okay, I'm seeing this brown on, well, everybody sees that, I'm sure, off of the road, up at J. Is that right? Anyway,
So you're asking about
is that the property you just mentioned that someone just bought and owns and wants to develop on it? Is that right?
are you talking about the dark brown on,
Yes,
off of J?
yes. Thanks.
Put your little arrow closer to the dark brown. Right there, that one?
Right.
Okay.
Is that going to be developed? Somebody bought it. It's somebody's land now. So I wonder, is that the future subdivision or neighborhood for that area?
Yes,
Brown, the dark
yes.
brown.
Yeah, the property owner did file a pre-app application last year for residential development. We met with them on that. So that's my basis for saying that there is some interest in development there. I don't know when that property owner bought it. I haven't done that research.
Well, once he starts developing, he's going to have to build up dirt. on
Yes, he
that
will.
Area.
Is that's not high enough on the floodplain? That's gonna be affected.
Oh, he sure
correct?
will.
Okay,
So everything in the blue, the finished floor elevation, so that the top of the foundation will have to be at least 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So if we were to flip over on the map, the other map, I don't know if Bethany can do that real quick. No, the PDF map.
Yeah,
Yes, so here we go. So I'm gonna try to call this out.
The blue doesn't mean there's water there. That's just,
Well,
no,
it's identified as having floodwaters in a 100-year flood event.
Right,
And
but
so
there's-
this is the area right here that we were talking about, the brown area,
yeah.
okay?
let's see.
And so right here, this is the cross-section P. So cross-section P says that the flood elevation waters are at 2,251.8 feet above mean sea level. And so anything that's constructed in and around this area is going to have to be built at that elevation. As you go upstream, it then becomes 2,252.9, and then accordingly. So all through this area, they're going to have to build 1 foot above the base flood elevations identified here, right? And so it's a little bit, it would be a little bit higher than normal, but it's
And then
not
they would
impossible.
they would be required to have flood insurance.
Yes,
Okay,
Okay, even though they've elevated their land,
right. Anybody who's
I
in the flood zones, whatever they are,
I- I
FEMA
see
does
that in-
require flood insurance because of the possibility that it could happen. And so that's my understanding. Is that correct?
that's correct.
okay? And I see the Thistle and Nest housing development that's going on, and they built whatever they're doing, they built it up a lot off of the.
I don't think it's, the height is to meet the code, but the area, once it's considered flood zone, you have to have flood insurance, whether it's flooding at the moment or not. It's because of future possibilities, but they have to build according to a higher standard to meet that possible flood. So if somebody was to buy the property, the realtor would say to them, this is in a floodplain and you will have to get FEMA flood insurance,
Oh, say
which
have
is considered, yes, you have to,
okay.
which is considerably higher than your standard homeowner's insurance.
Yeah,
So yeah, for those people who want to live in that area, they have to account for that additional cost.
one more. Is this, are you gonna change the course of Willow Creek in order to get what you want done? This Willow Creek is the source of the flooding, right? And so are you considering working on a flow, a change of flow from Willow Creek?
No,
So
there's
it will stay.
there's no plans by the city to alter the water course. That's the
Okay.
technical term. That includes changing where the water actually flows.
Under the
um,
bridge?
That also includes removing sediment. We can cut vegetation. We can't remove vegetation. We can't pull it out, right?
I don't know. Can
Well,
you?
I'm telling you. And so all we're proposing this evening is to amend the code so that the new map can become effective. No other physical changes to Willow Creek.
Yeah, a little confused about that and everything, because it just looks like it might change the direction, the way the water flows is all, because there's where the problem is, right? Is the creek.
That would be like trying to change nature.
I agree, that's right.
You know, that we have that huge round butte, all this water, and of course, water always flows with the least resistance. And, building dams and different things change that, but you really cannot change the nature of water, unfortunately.
Okay,
And that
one-
would be a huge cost.
I promise this is last.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Now, certain time of the year, the water stops. It just completely stops. And so well, for instance, our grandson and both of us were wading down Willow Creek and he was like 4 or 5 and it was really fun and everything. The next day it was gone. That water was gone. And so there's a way to shut the water off. So where's,
Actually, that creek is free flowing. So when you don't see water in it, it's because there isn't water pouring into it. It is a very seasonal creek. There isn't, as far as I know, any culverts that are being turned on or off to have that water flow. I've noticed even just in the last couple of weeks how much more water has been in there than what I can remember. But also I want to be clear that this change isn't happening because of any development. This change is happening because we have better information about a flood map. So this isn't a way to drive a specific development in that area. This is actually part of protecting the people that live in Madras, is making sure that we have an accurate flood map. So just to be clear, this isn't in support of any particular development or anything. It has more to do with us making sure that we're protecting our citizens from, as you noted, a very unpredictable creek that
yes,
flows through
like
our
this-
town.
This winter and fall have been really just like exciting to see all that water coming out.
Water heavy.
Yeah, I take pictures of it all the time because it doesn't happen very often, really.
No,
Although to flood people and the concern for it, FEMA, I suppose, it's a big deal, it's very active.
definitely. What we don't want is for people to feel safe when maybe they're not.
Yeah.
This gives us an opportunity to make sure that people who live here do have a forewarning. And if we have good and better information available, we should be sharing it with people who live there.
Now, if somebody who doesn't require flood insurance, let's say that they do after they have, the person that hasn't been or forced to get flood insurance, but yet it does flood a little bit or however much, do they get a break from the flood insurance requirement and are able to be helped somewhat from FEMA?
I think that's a very good question. I think people on the East Coast are dealing with the aftermath of the floods over there. And I think it's situation specific whether or not an area has been declared a disaster area and everything. So I don't think that we have the information to answer that particular question. Yes.
That person.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, do we have?
Just a quick comment. So no one likes paying the flood insurance. But when that event comes and FEMA literally will set up offices in our community, and there will be there'll be more tables than not for people who have flood insurance. And the people that don't, there's another conversation. It's a lot harder, right? So the facts are that if you have flood insurance, you've got documentation that you paid that premium, and you do get direct assistance from FEMA on that. They do have ways of helping people that don't have the insurance and things like that, but it's not as easy for them. There's a lot more work, and as I understand it, the assistance is not as much as otherwise.
With, in regards to that, do they have the option if they buy a home in the flood zone? We'll just call it flood zone general, no matter how, whether it's 100 years, 500 years, or whatever. Do they have the option to not buy flood insurance if they so choose?
It's my understanding.
My understanding it was required.
From my understanding, it is required unless you own the property outright.
Okay.
And in many cases, it's still required. See, what's happening here and why I made reference to the California fires is, and maybe I should have made reference to the hurricanes that happen every year in Florida, is that what happens is you are having fewer people pay into the system, or the amount of money that's coming into the flood insurance programs for premiums is less than the amount of money that's being paid out as a result of disasters. So the requirement is if you're in the area of the flood hazard, you are going to have insurance. Why? Because we need people to pay into the system to help subsidize the system so that when there is a disaster, we've got a resource to pay for the assistance post-disaster.
Okay.
This is the challenge facing our country related to natural hazards: hurricanes, tornadoes, wildfires, things like that. That is the bigger issue. And so, in most cases, property owners need to plan on paying the flood insurance, and the federally subsidized insurance is less than what they would normally pay in market.
The dark line that goes around the whole area, is that the widening of the new?
That's the study boundary.
Oh, that's a study bound.
In other words, I'm going to be silly for a second. They didn't use the LiDAR data to map the city water tank all the way out Adams Road because it's clearly outside of the floodplain, right? And they just used the LiDAR data that was reasonably close to the floodplain.
Okay.
So they're delineating what area was actually studied.
Okay, are there any more comments from staff?
Nope.
Are there any comments from the planning commission deliberation? Or actually, I guess, can we close the public hearing?
You need to take formal action to determine that, or you
Okay.
need to also take formal action if you don't want to close it to continue it to daytime and
Okay, so fellow commissioners, if you are ready to close the public testimony and move on to deliberation, if I can get a motion to do that, please.
This is Commissioner Kendall. I motion to close the public hearing and move on to deliberation.
This is Commissioner Eder, and I will second that motion.
Awesome, I have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. All right, guys, do we have anything that you would like to talk about for the record, deliberate on this? If not, we can move to recommend, modify, or deny as you see fit.
I have a question on your page, possibly 10 of 71. Page 10 of 71, Bethany, can you pull that up? It's past that one. Keep going. Looks like this.
Keep going. That one. No, keep going.
That's
That
right. Okay, that one. Just even though I have asked this several times, do we have a picture that's easier to understand? Because I know you had the different colors. Sorry, didn't help me. How much larger the area is that's more accurate now of what the floodplains is. This one. I need the old-fashioned overlays. This is what we have.
So
and now you see this.
there's kind of a swipe tool. We tried to design the mapper with the swipe tool. So you, on the lower left there, Bethany, lower left of the screen, there's the feature influence swipe tool. Just to the
Okay.
right of that.
Telling me how to get on it. Just tell me what I'm looking at. 'Cause
Right
I'm
now,
not
you're
getting
looking
on it
at
right
the
now.
existing map.
Okay, this is the existing map here.
Yes,
Okay, that's the old floodplain
yes,
map.
yes.
Okay, hang on. All right, now, is there any way to overlay the new one so you can
Yes.
still see the old one?
Kind of, but the boundaries are so similar, it's hard to see the difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just click back and forth.
you can see on that one, you see how the channel is divided. into
Right,
two.
and there's no division. It actually goes up a little bit. It looks like the arm. And the water part is the striped, the actual water,
Floodway, yes.
where we have water flowing across Grizzly. That's the pink. Okay. Thank you.
I feel like this is long overdue and needs to happen. 1989 is a long time ago. It's very minimal if you look at the increases on that chart, seeing those numbers. And I feel like flood insurance is probably minimal when you're buying a home. I mean, I Googled it and it's $800 a year. So that's the average in Oregon. $70 a month, basically. So I would like to motion to approve this to go to city council. Recommend that.
I'd like to second that. We have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. And I do appreciate too the timeline that you set up. That made more sense about why it kind of took a little while for it to get to this point, but also why you needed to wait in order to rebuild that bridge, which I'm sure during COVID was not, was delayed because I remember some of this being talked about earlier. So
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
mean, it wasn't fun. We didn't like changing our bus routes for 2 years. We didn't, want to spend $2 million to the city, $2 million for the county. I mean, we had to do this. It was the right thing long-term. We'll really appreciate that. But thank you, Chair, for that perspective.
All right, now we get to move on to our second item, City of Madras Code Amendments to implement the city public improvement design and construction standards in the municipal code. I will open the public hearing. Does any commissioner have any actual economic conflict of interest to disclose? Commissioner Hill
I do not.
I do not.
and Commissioner Urban, I do not. All right, let's move on to the staff report.
Well, you aren't going to get a PowerPoint for this one. You aren't going to get a PowerPoint for this one. This is a little simpler. The code amendments are a little more lengthy, but really this at a very high level. This is pretty straightforward. This was really started when the Public Works Director said, hey, I need to update our public improvement design and construction standards. And that is a document that is adopted by ordinance that largely the Public Works Department administers. It specifies how sewer is going to be constructed and designed, and same for drinking water, and the same for streets and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it's engineering stuff, right? They need to update that document. And in 2023, I think it was, City Council passed an ordinance and said, if the standards and specifications need to be updated and they're really not any policy changes, we're changing, a street width from 51 to 52 feet, for example, or some very straightforward non-policy decision, then the department or the city can make those changes by the council passing a resolution instead of an ordinance. What we also discovered with the recent round of changes to the public improvement and design and construction standards is that we needed to also amend the development code so that when developers come in and propose some sort of land use and or development, that the standards in the development code are consistent with the public improvement design and construction standards. In other words, the two sets of regulations are consistent with each other. The worst thing you want is where they are inconsistent with each other, and then you get staff or developers arguing which one applies. So This amendment right here before you brings the city's development code consistent with the public improvement design and construction standards. It really is as simple as that. There is some significant changes there, but the wording changes are just reflecting best practice or existing practice that we've deviated from, or we're deviating from the existing code. So we're bringing our practices, we're bringing our code up to current practice. So, you know, the public works director couldn't be here. He had an engagement that was worthy of his attendance. And so this is really about as straightforward as you can get. By policy, when I mentioned policy change, let's just say right now I think we require 52 feet or 53 feet for a local street. Let's just say all of a sudden we wanted to have 25-foot wide streets. That would be a policy change, right? Because it would affect who could use that street or how that street may be used and that sort of thing. We don't have any changes like that. Public Works Director hasn't made any policy changes to the public improvement design and construction standards that are policy changes of that nature. So it's really bringing the two regulations to be consistent with each other. Specific questions beyond that, or any questions beyond that?
There's a lot of red lines in this document. I mean, I get that the parameters, but I just read one where it's prohibiting cul-de-sacs, dead-end streets, unless authorized. And so was that already prohibited in a different item?
The standards and specifications already say that.
Okay. So you're basically, I mean, I see in some places where you reference the standard and then some places where it's referenced, the item is referenced specifically.
Yes.
Okay,
In some cases it's needed, right?
okay,
In some instances, we want to be very, very specific. In other instances, we want to reference the standards and specifications.
okay.
Also, some of these changes are making the analysis of whether development is consistent with development code, frankly, a little easier and more
Mhm.
reasonable.
Okay,
And so, so I'm looking at page 23 of 70. It was section 4, now it's 3, and it says minimum. Maybe you can zoom in just a little bit, Bethany, at the top there. Point that much. There you go. It says, it used to say minimum right-of-way and roadway width. The street right-of-way and roadway surfacing widths must be conformance with standard specifications. And that's it. So now we're saying widths, design materials, the widths, design materials, the rights-of-way, private street easements, streets, driveways, and alleys must be compliant with the design and construction standards without limiting the foregoing whenever existing streets, driveways, alleys, abutting, or within a development do not meet minimum standards. Additional right-of-way or easement width must be dedicated and/or additional improvements must be made to achieve compliance with the standards. And ODOT must follow these standards too. So is it a big change? No, it's rewriting this to clarify, one, that in the public improvement design standards today, it gives your public works director the authority to modify the standards when he sees appropriate. And this revision right here, this specific one saying that they need to meet the standards, but in some cases, we can allow a slightly different standard. And if it does, we don't call out ODOT making, if we don't call out the ODOT is to follow these standards, then guess what? When ODOT comes through and does highway improvements, we can't hold them accountable. Is that a big change? No, I don't think it is. That's the nature we're talking about here. So we're really clarifying the standards to what we really need to get development to build infrastructure to our standards today.
so all the way down in chapter 12.25, in public rights of way, there is an addition of city administrator as a definition, and then it gives the city administrator the right to accept on behalf of the city grants or dedications of public rights of way. Had that already appeared in a different code, or is this a new right being granted to the city administrator?
This is a slight change because every time that someone wanted to dedicate right away to the city, we had to bring it to the city council for them to approve it.
Okay.
So now that authority is given to the city administrator,
Correct.
which is you.
Which is
No.
not me.
Who's the city administrator?
Will Evershoff.
He's been to a couple of the meetings.
Yeah.
Is he your boss?
Yes, he's my boss. He's the public works director's boss.
Oh, okay.
Does the city council have to approve this as well?
Yes, so this hearing is the first of 2 planned hearings. You're going to review it. Hopefully take some sort of formal action on this evening, and then the city council will review it as well.
Is that, so right now, the city administrator doesn't have the authority to make these changes without going to the city council,
Correct.
and that's too cumbersome? Is that why this change is?
It's inefficient. So what the problem with that is we only get to accept right-of-way dedication or establish right-of-way in accordance with the public improvement design and construction standards. So that there really isn't a decision. Those standards are very clear on the circumstances by which right-of-way gets dedicated and how we go about establishing that right-of-way.
So the rules are there. You just want to give the administrator the right to say, yes, let's go by the rules versus having to go to the city council to say, yes, let's go by the rules.
Yeah, to say it maybe slightly different. We already have the parameters by which we
Have to follow.
create right-of-way. Those are the standards, right?
Right.
We're just saying the process by which the right-of-way is going to get
Approved.
dedicated or approved is going to be different. Instead of the city council approving it based on the parameters, it'll be the administrator
Right,
approving it
but you're
based on.
not creating new parameters each and every time. You're having to abide by the parameters
Correct.
that are already present.
That
You're
are-
just giving
exact-
it
Yes.
a different person.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
So is chapter 12.30 completely, everything is getting taken away
Yes,
from this chapter?
yes. And so that's why you're seeing also some of the changes in the development code. So we're taking some of this from chapter 12, adding it to the development code, right? So it's all kind of consolidated in one section of the municipal code. And then we also have some of this already in the standards and specifications. So it's what I would call code administration, making our code efficient and effective.
Okay.
So I guess I myself am feeling a little bit hesitant because this has a lot of things, and I would like to be able to look at this in conjunction with the development code, because I feel like that's our role, is to be an oversight for changes like this. And even though they seem minor in my head,
It's late and.
it's late and there's a lot of red in here. If it was just 1 or 2 items, it would be easier for me to do, but I guess I would like to see the development code that's being referred to, as well as just making sure that, like, the parameters for the rights of way, I guess I don't want to just easily give rights to a person that I don't quite understand. So that's what I'm feeling.
Can we have a copy of of the way it's written now so that we know what you're deleting? Does that make sense?
You do have that. So anything
On
that,
12, we have that. 12 is the way it is right now.
yes.
And you just want to delete it.
Well, no. So So anything that has the strike through front, right, like you see up
Yeah.
on the screen, that's proposed to be deleted. That's the existing. That's proposed to be deleted.
What are you replacing 12 with?
So that's anything with underlined font is the language that's being proposed to be added.
So they're just getting rid of all this and they're replacing it with.
I think we just need more time to review it.
With this. That's all. They're getting rid of all this and this is saying the same thing.
I think 12 is in here. It's back there and then they put it into other sections throughout the document,
Oh.
but didn't reference which, where
Which
they
one they
cross
put
things,
it
where
through.
they put it. And so that's kind of what you have to go through and, cross-check and figure out.
So I think if we need more information, I'm thinking that maybe a motion to continue to a date and time certain might be appropriate. And our next meeting is scheduled for when?
February 5th.
February 5th. Would that be an appropriate time to move this to?
Yep. It's your
Okay.
regular scheduled meeting, the first meeting of the month.
Okay.
You said February 5?
5.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, unless you guys want to come back next week, you can do that. We're open to that.
And can we get a copy of, or unless it's 5,000 pages?
Yeah, or even just direction, like, okay, so Melissa, look at this document on the Madras website that already includes all this information that's being deleted, so that's not mentioned twice, if that makes sense. So I think if you can tell us where we need to look, I can look it up,
Yes.
but I just need time. And I can do that by February 5th.
Okay. So I think, so what I'm hearing you say is, one, you want slightly different information and where to find what's exists today. And compare that to what we're proposing. But not get it in the packet a week before the meeting. You want it, let's just say, next week. So between now and the next meeting, you can actually take the time to review that.
Exactly. And I understand that in here that you've crossed out stuff that's being deleted from the specific document, but you're referring to a different development code so where to look for in that document where
Yeah.
that language exists.
Yeah.
So that I feel comfortable that we're not just,
Yeah. So what the Public Works Director and I typically do, in this case, we didn't, right or wrong, is we have done kind of summary tables, kind of like a spreadsheet with just some text, like here's the code section, here's what it says today, here's what we're changing it to. In that, we can also include hyperlinks to the various documents.
that would be awesome. And I'm sorry that may take some work, but because of the amount of things that are changing, even though they might just be administrative, I would feel comfortable with that. And specifically, any supporting evidence about the city administrator change with the public rights of way. I would
Yep.
just like to feel good about that.
Yep. Okay.
Sammy, the same thing, please.
Well, you all get it.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Wonderful. So
Doesn't work that way. One request and everyone gets it.
yeah. Can you make a motion?
Yes. This is Commissioner Utter, and I will make a motion to,
Actually, before you do that, could you please just ask if there's any public comments this evening?
Yes, thank you. Are there any public comments this evening in regards to this item?
And there's no one online.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry. This is Commissioner Utter, and I would like to make a motion to recommend and continue the public hearing to Wednesday, February 5th at 6:30 PM.
Oh, I second it, sorry.
Wonderful. I have a first and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Now we get to move on to our agenda our meeting minute approvals. There are three different agendas to approve, one from September 4th, one from October 9th, and one from October 23rd. Bethany, can you go over, just so I understand, when you are preparing the meeting minutes, are you using like an AI tool? Do you listen to it again, or how do you?
So some of these were actually sent to a third-party organization and they transcribe it for us. And then I get it back. I give it a quick skim through and answer any questions that they have, maybe that they couldn't hear in the audio. And then recently, I think the October 23rd, I might have made myself. And that one I transcribed via Zoom and then summarize.
Okay. Oh, here it is. Do I have any questions for any of the meeting minutes? I am relieved that you didn't have to write all this yourself, so. Yeah. Yes.
I think it does pretty well doing the transcribing.
Yeah. It didn't say, Melissa had an eye roll.
Did they ever finish? With the minutes of meeting, this is just a question. Did they ever finalize site 8?
I was going to get to that during additional discussion, but you can take the air out of my balloon, yes.
Sorry.
I'll give you a little more details here in maybe a few more minutes or.
Okay. Since we're reading about the minutes of it, that was quite the meeting.
Okay, I don't have any questions or revisions that I can find. Do you guys have anything?
No.
So I think if you'd like to make a motion, you can reference the 3 dates.
Okay, I can do that. This is Commissioner Etter, and I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 4th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, the October 9th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, and the October 23rd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
This is Commissioner Kendall. I second the motion.
All right, I have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Yay. All right, next item is the annual election of the commission chair and vice chair. I am happy to continue to serve as chair if that works for everybody else. I know we need a motion. We're just kind of talking through this for a second. And Ashlyn, you're okay maintaining vice chair?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And is that okay with you? Okay. So let's see. Can I get a motion maybe from Commissioner Kendall?
Okay, I make a motion to continue to leave the chair and vice chair as it stands with Melissa Irving as the chair and Commissioner Etter as the vice chair.
Wonderful. I accept. You accept?
Yes.
Okay. So I have a first. I guess I'll make the second. So I have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, now we get to move on to additional discussion items.
Yes, so you've, your next planning commission hearing date, February 5th. Mark your calendars on that. Just a quick report on the large lot industrial project. The city council did take formal action to approve site 9. Okay. The Board of Commissioners also took the same action. And then on, I think it was, I should know this date, January 7th, I submitted notice to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. Over 3,000 pages in the record. Yes, alphabetically indexed by reverse chronological order with the table of contents. Yeah. So we are now in a 21-day appeal period before DLCD. So people can appeal that have standing, meaning they participated in the hearings. Then if there's no appeal, the department will review it, and they have 120 days to review it. They can call that up and review it and hold a public hearing before the Land Conservation and Development Commission, what I refer to as like the State Planning Commission, right? So those are members, 7 members appointed by the governor. And instead of going to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, and that would be before 3 judges who are, of course, attorneys. And so governor appointed members in the LCDC versus LUBA, there are differences. So I think there's at least a 50% chance it'll get appealed. But I do think that we've got a good record. I think the decision was made with an adequate factual basis. I think that the last planning commission hearing that you guys held, we did update the findings, and then we slightly tuned them up just a little bit more before the city council passed their adopting ordinance. So I feel pretty good about that. So we're kind of a wait and see, and I have about a 50% chance of or a 50% optimistic but they'll be approved.
So how many days is there out there open for an appeal of the
I
public?
believe it's 21 days.
21 days?
Yeah.
And how many days are we into it already?
8.
Okay. So they have 21 days to appeal.
Mm.
And then what was the 120 days appeal?
The Department of Land Conservation and Development staff have 120 days to review the
Oh,
proposal.
to review.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if they find problems, they can refer it to the LCDC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the main thing is the public, because that was definitely a heated meeting.
Yeah, that was one of the warmer ones you've had in a while. Although I think back to some of the others, and well, it wasn't so bad. I mean, I think back to marijuana and all those days.
The meeting where we got to approve the temporary use permit or the special use permit for the dog people,
The best.
where people were clapping
yeah.
when we
Yeah,
approved
yeah.
that.
That's
I
the other
prefer like
extreme.
that.
Yeah. That's your beacon of how planning commission meetings should go. Keep that right in front of your mind.
Yeah, yeah. This one with the large lot lands was not it.
I remember when people.
Yeah.
were talking.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We are currently entertaining interest from large developers with uses that were identified in the target industries. Yeah, yeah. And one of the sites you're looking at is the large lot site. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the reality is if you want to talk about economic development in Central Oregon or the state, you got to have land in an urban growth boundary that can be developed, right? That's why Governor Kotek was going to supersite land in Hillsborough for the CHIPS Act and for Intel. But as soon as they didn't get the federal funding, guess what? Yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. See you later. No need to, right? It matters. When you're talking, Intel was going to invest, what was it, like $40 billion in facilities? Billions. These are the sorts of things that change the economics of a state. Yeah. Yeah, and somewhat related, actually, is it this week? Oh, no, Friday, 1:30 PM. We saw Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council, which is kind of a regional council of governments. we're holding our last steering committee meeting for the update to the large lot industrial program. So, I mean, it was still alive. We are currently updating it right now. We know we need to do this. There's value in it. I mean, Redmond they've got a large developer that wants to develop a significant piece of land there. The only thing that's stopping that is the cost for the infrastructure, the highway improvements. So, I mean, eventually it's going to get developed, right? It will. So the only way you get to do that is through the large lot program. Well, that would be a business. What type of business are you referring to? Small business? Yeah. So Commissioner, I couldn't agree with you more. I think of there's this, yeah, yeah. In the planning world, we talk about this as the jobs housing balance, right? And so I like to think of a pendulum, right? On one extreme, you're focusing on either jobs, the other extreme, it may be housing, right? And so we've been spending a lot of time and effort, and of course, money on housing, right? I think the pendulum's going to swing back to the economic development side. And I'm starting to see that in the legislature and otherwise. And so to your point, I think when you want to start creating change, economic change in your community, you have homes or the ability to have a home for people to live in the community if they have a job. We need to increase the number of jobs in our community, right? And so it's a balance. You don't get one or the other. In fact, actually, if you, with the changes in the housing industry, in terms of how the developers get financed and construct and timeline and all that sort of stuff, there really isn't like, oh, I build a bunch of homes and they slowly get occupied and then we, get some more jobs. It's, we build a few, we build a few, build a few. So you don't get that imbalance like you used to have before. The 2008 recession fixed that. So that's why I think the economic development piece, large lot industrial, hiring our economic development manager, who's doing a phenomenal job, by the way. And we're getting ready to set up the advisory committee again that Commissioner Etter's father helped establish. I'm super excited about that. We've got a grant to set up an economic development strategy for the county. Excited about that. So a lot of things are starting to focus back on the economic development side because all the housing pieces are in place. You and the council changed your code, you changed your process, we've set up incentives, all these sorts of things. The state's now helping out a lot more than they used to. Now we need to focus on the job. So Commissioner Kendall, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's tough. As much as I would love to have that, I'm just not seeing it right now. And when you look on the retail side of our economy, very few are building new bricks and mortar, right? And so what's happening right now is tourism is still, something that exists and people are building with that. But doggone it, when a package can get delivered to your house with 1 or 2 days, we're in a metro area in 3 hours, it's hard to change that practice because candidly, my 73-year-old mother or 75-year-old mother is now saying, oh, well, why do I need to leave the house? I don't want to drive, can't drive, shouldn't drive, and then everything at the store, I can just have the house in 3 hours. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, I can say I needed some shoes and some pants for a recital that my second child told me 2 hours before the recital. And I went to Renoso's and was able to get everything. So it was great. I know the new little
You
boutique
get,
is
you get 3
great.
stars for the day.
Yeah, so I think, I think our town is doing so well.
Yeah.
It's growing well. We're bringing things in and, you know, the new restaurants, the Starbucks, I'm so happy with all of it.
Yeah.
And,
That
yeah.
new building.
But
Or just go in and be like, hey, I'm Commissioner Kendall, I want to see your place and meet the
They'll,
owner.
they'll show you around. Do you have any other discussion items? No? Okay. Then I can adjourn this meeting at 8:15 PM.